Really is about. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to welcome tonight's presenter, Marianne Fleischer.
Thank you, Alan. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said, not only are you crazy to have the nerve to talk on this subject, you're talking to a room full of trainers. Tough crowd. You know, when we think on our feet, when someone comes up in front of the room, our brains make instant computations, instant snap judgments. That's one thing that makes it so scary. We decide, is this a friend or a foe? Do I want to approach or avoid that person? Not sure sometimes. You think, this person's got any status? They have any authority? You think, I really want to have lunch with this person? Thousands of computations are made, according to neuroscience, in 7 seconds. 7 seconds. So how am I doing? More importantly, how do you do when you have to think on your feet, when you have to keep cool under fire? And that's what we're doing today. That's the subject of our talk today. When does this come up? When is it really scary? Pitching ideas to leadership teams? What else? Tough Q&A sessions. What else comes up for you when it seems to really matter, thinking on your feet?
Presenting in front of senior leaders.
Sure. Town halls, roundtables, forums, media interviews, all those times that as you rise in your career, that's what you have to do. So a lot of people think, I'm pretty brilliant, but this is out of my comfort zone. Other people do that. I'm not Robin Williams. This is not what I do. And I say au contraire. It's a skill that can be learned. It's an advanced presentation skill, but like any other, it can be learned. So let's dive in. Objectives. Want to help you think on your feet with more confidence. Want to help you read the room, handle interruptions, switch gears. All those things we're tasked to do. And polish your professional presence. Expectations for tonight. First, think big. I know you've got a lot on your plate. Clear that out. Tonight, I want you to think about the big moments in your career where thinking on your feet can propel you forward if you do well or impede you if you don't. So think big about who you are tonight. This is a master's class in presentation skills. And a safe environment. It's just us chickens here, gather around. This isn't your work. This is just us tonight. The second thing I want to set expectations for is format. This is just going to be a lively mix of mini TED Talks and improv exercises. Mini TED Talks, improv exercises. We'll just keep mixing it up. So I'll have you stand up, get in the middle, and then back at your seats. And then the last expectation is questions. Please feel free to ask questions at any time. The only caveat is this is a juicy subject, it touches a nerve, and we could run out of time. So please allow me just to be the time cop. And I'm going to do that with my little handy bell to make us move along. Okay. Agenda. Really just 3 things. Mental prep. A lot of people think, thinking on your feet, how can you prepare for that? Well, you can. There's a lot of techniques that I can show you, just like you learn computer skills and they take you throughout your career. There's thinking on your feet skills, and we're going to cover those. The art of influence, and then what-if scenarios. So let's start with some improv. I want you to pair up in twos and take a few of these cards. First improv game is called Storyteller. So you need to pair with somebody. I want you to stand up, face each other, and one person gets the cards. All of the cards, and then we're going to switch. So one person gets the cards, and you start with any phrase like, it all started, or once upon a time, and then the other person is going to hold up a card, and you have to switch where the story goes.
So the person without the card starts?
The person without the cards is the storyteller. The person with the cards is the director. And you switch the story. Just like in our careers, you got to switch gears. You planned one thing, and then out of left field, here comes something else. Got it? Questions? Okay, so you have 2 minutes to tell the story. Started with Once Upon a Time or in the beginning. Okay?
Once upon a time, there was this little man who had a bird.
He was a very precise. He did a very precise.
Hold up the cards so he has a reactive
He
card.
decided he was going to go on a ship that was near a lighthouse. And inside the lighthouse, there were 3 masts that really impressed him a lot. They kind of looked like his birds.
He thought he saw a shape on the ground. He couldn't be sure. Because it was too far away. And it was actually quite dark.
And then his bird fell in love with this other bird, and they were at the lighthouse. And he went off to the never land where Little Red Robinson, Riding Hood, was sitting and having dinner with the wolf. Lo and behold, at the end of the whole story, well, yeah, my end, because the little man turned out to be a wolf. And Little Riding Hood turned out to be a little girl. And they went happily ever after on the way. But then, evil walked through the door. And the gods frowned upon evil. Because the genie came and flew in a magic carpet to pronounce the man and wife.
Switch people. Storytellers switch. Directors switch. So how'd you do as storytellers? What was that like?
Challenging.
How so?
I didn't give enough thought to what I wanted, like an intro to the story, or what I kind of should shape my story around, which worked out in the end because then I realized I could kind of shape it however I wanted to and change the course of it.
You could change it as you went.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. What else? What else did people notice? Were you a better storyteller than you thought? On your feet with nothing?
None of it made sense, but it flowed, I think.
It flowed?
Yeah.
Well, that's really what it is. It's, you're having to trust yourself in the moment in these times when we don't get to prepare. And I hope you just got a little glimpse of some confidence with that. Because that's what it's like when it's real. Okay, let's do another one. This one's called Your Life in a Minute. I want you to pick a different partner, and I want you to tell your life in a minute. Because another skill that you have to do when you think on your feet is have to cut to the chase. So you've got 2 minutes, and then you'll switch. So pick new people you didn't work with. Tell your story. And I'm going to ring the bell. Okay, you've got 2 minutes. Go.
Hi, my name is Lisa Chandler. I was born and raised in the state of Colorado. There's lots of trees, mountains, forests. I'm thinking of my story that I told about a forest earlier. So I was born and raised in the state of Colorado. After graduating from the University of Colorado, I moved to San Francisco. For the last 10 years. It's a great city. I spent the first 8 years that the first 6 years that I was here in the world of finance, and very quickly got bored of it. So I started
Is it 2 minutes for both?
2 minutes for each person.
Oh.
So that pretty much wraps up my career world, my career life in 37 seconds.
You got about 30 seconds.
And I also love to take a great vacations to Georgia, so I love being in the summer. I don't do a lot of in Northern California, but I do enjoy being in the space of my ocean. I don't have any plans on leaving anytime soon. I've had such a short life thus far. Perfect.
Okay, let's switch. So professionals who are good on their feet, they have to be engaging storytellers on the fly. They have to cut to the chase. How did that feel? Taking your whole life and squishing it into 2 minutes. Who felt that they got to tell their story, or maybe the person who heard it would be better to answer that? Did you feel you got a good sense?
Yeah.
You did?
It's interesting what they chose, whether at certain times you hear a lot about career and places you live, and other times you hear about hobbies. And it's interesting talking to people and what they put first.
It is. And that's how we're judged, too, on what we put first. In these situations, when you have to think on your feet. Okay, let's do another one. This one we need 4 brave souls to come up in the front of the room, and the rest of you can take your seat. Here comes 1. Here comes 2.
All right, 2 out of 4.
Okay, here comes 3, and here comes Alan. Oh, is that you?
I know, I'll volunteer.
Thank you, dear. Okay, this improv game is called Orchestrated Sentence. And how this works is we give them a topic, and then I orchestrate, like a conductor, I call on them, and they start talking, but then the next person picks up, and it's all very random. So the purpose of this exercise is to not only look good, but make your teammates look good. So you listen to what they say too, and if you're really sharp, you incorporate possibly a bit of their story into yours. If you can, if it's organic.
Should they be our own stories and we...
No, you're actually telling one story. The first topic that I'll give you, and the second one the group can make up the story. So your topic is how to throw a great dinner party, a killer dinner party. Okay? And I'll randomly call on you, and then when you're done, it's the next guy, okay? All right, here we go. How do you throw a great dinner party?
Wine. Lots and lots of wine. A wide selection of wines is a really important thing. Some people like a nice cool wine, or maybe a slightly dry, slightly sweet wine. Some people like a fuller red wine.
And when you're serving multiple different bottles of wine throughout the evening, you got to make sure you have the right glassware to match the wines, and you have to pre-chill your wines so that it's actually cold when they arrive. It's really embarrassing to have warm white wine for guests. And so,
you also want to pair the wines with food that will actually accommodate them, that work well with them. So if you're having a broad range of wines, you might also be thinking in terms of whether you're having multiple courses, that specific wines will go with that course, or you have...
So as you're going through your courses, it's very important to remember your planning out when you're actually going to cook things so that
you have everything ready when your guests arrive. The other thing you might want to think about doing is having a more progressive dinner party, where at one house you're having your appetizers with certain wines, and then at the main course you're having the main course with other wines, and then you go off to someone else's.
And even when you do that, you still want to make sure that although you're pairing your courses and your wines that way at different locations, some people like red and some people like white, no matter what the food is. So you want to make sure that everybody has some of each at their houses for those people who like it that way. I also think it's great that the final person has something that's a great dessert accompaniment. It could be a sweet wine, it could be champagne, whatever you really think you're doing it by that time as a team.
Bring it home.
Because by that point, people are really, really, really going to need something more to drink. Your 10 courses in a progressive dinner, each one's had either a glass of wine or a glass of red. The thing you really need is a real nice, heavy glass of port, just a glass of food.
Did you notice that sometimes they helped each other look good by picking up on what the other one said? That's one of the characteristics that you need when you're on your feet. Not only taking care of yourself, but how's the team look? Okay. Another quality, and you gave me the perfect lead into this, Lisa, is being sticky. When we have to think on our feet, when we have to marshal it very quick in the moment, we have to get quick handles to our go-tos in our brain because we don't have time to look to something. So the phrase, be sticky. Everyone's familiar with that from the Heath brothers. People know this phrase. Even if you don't, it just means what's going to resonate, what's going to stay with them. Of all that you know, because we know so much and too much, in that moment, with that audience, at that moment, how can you be the most sticky? So here's a few things, besides obvious content, and we don't have time to go into what that is today, but you have to engage as a storyteller. You have to cut to the plot points very fast. You have to help the team look good. And you have to exude conviction. Because if you don't care, why do we? And when you're on your feet, people are looking for, I got a million things on my agenda. Why should I bother with what you're talking about? So it's got to have conviction. So would everybody stand up real quick and make a circle here.
We're supposed to be doing this as we exude conviction.
Well, right now you are. Right now I want to ask you, why do you do this work? Why do you do this work? You could have been an astronaut. You could have been a ballerina, Alan. You chose to do leadership and development. So I ask you, why do you do this work? What wakes you up in the morning?
I like to see people have defining moments in their career.
Okay.
I like to help make that happen.
Ask them why.
Why do you do what you do?
I like helping people get better at what they do.
I like feeling that I am giving people tools that will help make their lives better.
Sorry. Lisa, you're at Whole Foods.
I am at Whole Foods.
Big name, big company. Why do you do this work?
I really enjoy, in addition to all the things that have been said, I really enjoy teaching someone something and then being able to witness them teach someone else the exact same thing.
Yeah, that's nice. Very good. Thanks. Okay, have a seat. Conviction, critical, especially when you're on your feet. Now, this is the part you need to put your thinking caps on. We're going to talk about managing performance anxiety through the lens of neuroscience. We've all been there, stage fright, performance anxiety. What does it look like for you? Your knees knock, hands get sweaty. What else? You're human. What happens? Flutter in your chest. Mouth dry. Stutter.
For the first 5 minutes, but after that, all this.
That can happen. These are real things that happen in your body when you're under the weight of performance anxiety. Now, many of you are trainers and have read about neuroscience, but let me just pick out a few things that are just so interesting and really can inform how we think about stage fright and manage it in a much better way. The first thing is to think about our brains. We really have two brains. The front part, the neocortex, where you make all your decisions, do this, do that, work for Pandora, work for Burger King, marry Fred, marry Sue, the decisions that we make. But there's an older part of the brain, way in the back, called the amygdala, that's first formed when we're babies. And this is the part that handles the threat response. It's also the automatic operating system. If you put your hand out to a hot stove, you pull away. You don't have to think about that. If your house is on fire and your baby's inside, you run in. You don't think about that. Here's the takeaway. Same thing in public speaking when you're on your feet. You have an automatic response to fear. It's not just you being weak. It's really your monkey brain, your reptilian brain, the old part that is alerting you to a threat. Now, what's interesting, in the last 20 years, neuroscience has found out that there's really a lot that we can see that we didn't know before that can inform us. So let me go through a few of these. It's a huge subject, so let me just touch on about 4 things. The first one is understanding adrenaline in the role of performance anxiety. When we were cavemen and a lion was coming toward us, we were filled with adrenaline so we could run away. It gave us that extra strength. The takeaway, the brain makes no distinction whether a lion is coming at you or you're facing a leadership team in Q&A. In your brain, same threat response, same reaction. That's why the fear comes. That's why you get hot and sweaty, and that's why you get a rush of adrenaline when you're scared. A couple of case studies. Eisenberg and Lieberman in Trends in Cognitive Science found the same primitive neural net lights up if you're in a tough Q&A session as if you were walking in the Tenderloin on a lonely night and you heard footsteps. No distinction in the brain. Dr. Gordon in the Journal of Neuroscience said, our survival dictates that we have a negative bias to look for threats. That's why you cave in and say, I'm going to choke, I'm going to fail, this isn't going to work. And it's not you being weak, it's your monkey brain, your amygdala, telling you to be on the lookout for threats. It's very interesting when you shift and look at that. It's not just you not getting somewhere, it's really how we're programmed. Now here's the good news. Bruce mentioned something, that when you speak, it's terrifying for 5 minutes and then it goes away. Well, what neuroscience has found that it's actually 90 seconds. In 90 seconds, our parasympathetic nervous system kicks in and it lowers heart rate, it lowers the feeling of stress, and it makes breathing easier in 90 seconds. But because you're impaired, actually, when you're in the throes of stage fright, you think it goes on for 5 minutes. It literally goes on for 90 seconds. So I find that kind of encouraging to know that when I'm freaking out and sweating, it's going to dissipate much sooner than I thought. Another thing to understand is the role of dopamine. Again, in our caveman days, we were flooded with dopamine when we saw the lion coming at us. And we had to remember, the lion comes here at noon to drink water. Line, water, noon. Line, water, noon. Don't go there. Dopamine gives us our focus, but it also can morph into tunnel vision. And so instead of just the good part of don't go where the line goes at noon, we think, I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail, I'm going to blow it, they hate me. And we get into that tunnel vision thing. Dr. Submanian found in the Journal of Cognitive Neuroscience, when we're threatened, our brain inhibits us from reading subtle signals in problem solving because the big guns are focused on the threat. That's why we get a little more stupid. We need the brain power somewhere else. And that vigilant amygdala, that primitive brain, has us err on the safe side to avoid opportunities that could appear as threat. Well, how does that show up in your company? You become a low risk taker. Not exactly good for innovation. It's the opposite of what you want. But when you understand what's happening, it makes it less threatening. Dr. Arnsten in the Biology of Applied Science said, when we sense threat, we get less oxygen to the brain, less glucose to the brain, which means we have less memory, and we have impaired linear thinking. We really do get dumber in that moment, yes.
I believe the term they use for that is an amygdala hijack.
Great term.
It actually takes The amygdala says,
That's a great term.
you're not going to get, the rest of the brain ain't going to get what it wants normally.
That's a great term.
I'm taking it all.
I love it.
The amygdala's in charge.
Yeah, it's exactly what happens. So I think when you understand it, you can manage performance anxiety a little better. The other thing I want to mention, two other things, is oxytocin. This is sometimes called the trust hormone. It's released in pregnant women, and it makes us bond with our babies. Men have it too, but women have more of it. And what happens is, in a threat situation, let's say someone is threatening a mother's baby. We get a reputation of becoming mama bears, right? We'll do anything. You know, fear be damned, we'll rescue the baby. What happens is we're flooded with oxytocin, and it dampens the threat response. That's why we get braver. Isn't that interesting? So, for a public speaker, the tip here is, instead of going into a tough Q&A session and think, oh my God, I'm scared of this audience, you know, I'm going into battle, get protective of them. Think, I want to give them news they can use. They took some valuable time to be here. I'm honored by that. I want to make sure they get what they need. And if you do, you'll be rewarded with flooding of oxytocin, which dampens the threat response. I find that very interesting. One of the last things I want to say about neuroscience in the short term is neuroplasticity. You guys heard that term on the luminosity ads on TV, certainly. Well, to just shorten it, 20 years ago, neuroscientists thought our brains were fixed. You know, our abilities were pretty much set when we were very early on in our life. Now, through MRI brain scans, we can see that you can unlearn skills and you can unlearn emotions. You can unlearn stage fright. And we just used to think, you know, that was set. And here's an interesting phrase. The brain rewards habit with more real estate. The brain rewards habit with more real estate. When you look at a brain, it has all those little ruts. Well, if you're in a stage fright situation and you think, oh my God, I'm going to blow it, you build more ruts. And that deepens. Conversely, if you think, I got this, those synapses weaken, where you had those old habits about I can't do this. So it behooves you to really think that, because your brain will register and build more ruts of the bad things we don't want to think about.
Could you give another example of that?
Another example of?
So if you're, essentially, just to make sure I'm understanding, if you repeat behaviors enough, that is what you're
Thinking. I'm talking about thinking.
Okay.
If you repeat, I'm going to blow this, it literally will build ruts in your brain, and you will return there every time that situation comes up. But if you consciously say, I'm going to fight that, I'm not going to give that brain more synapses. So I'm going to think, you know what? I know this material. I've got this. Even if you're not completely sure, it will change your brain chemistry. And those fear responses, those synapses that have built, will weaken and literally dissipate. Dr. Schwartz, a leading neuroscientist in this field, says, the life that we think creates the brain we have. The life we think creates the brain we have. You know, and that's why they've studied this in San Diego. They've studied elite soldiers, elite athletes, people who do improv comedy, and they're always pretty unfazed by new situations. And that's the difference between that and the rest of the world is they just expect that stuff is coming. They just don't know when. Most people just are always amazed and surprised. But people who practice this in improv or soldiers or athletes, they know it's always coming. And so they don't flip into panic mode. So let's do some practical tips on managing. Deep belly breaths. You've always heard this. It's the go-to, but it works. And it's not up here in the top of your voice. It's deep in your diaphragm. 4 deep belly breaths will lower the stress. response. An interesting one are power poses. Are anybody familiar with Amy Cutter's work out of Harvard on power poses? Interesting stuff, isn't it? There you go. What they found is when people do power poses like Olympians, yes, I've got this, or oh yeah, or this, or feet on the desk, it literally raises testosterone in both sexes, which is our sense of dominance, 25%, and it lowers cortisol, the stress hormone, 9%. So just as a quick fix, when you're going to have a situation coming up, yes, do those. They're studying it at Harvard, what can I tell you? Okay, I'm going to give you a new mantra, and that is expect biology. That's what we've been just talking now. Expect you're going to be flooded with adrenaline when you get into a stage fright situation, flooded with dopamine that helps you focus but can turn into tunnel vision. And if you're smart, you'll invite in oxytocin. You'll get protective of your audience instead of fearing it as a battle. So expect biology. Have that little phrase ready when you have to think on your feet, and it will help you. Okay, there's some foods that help. There's some actual foods that help. Smelling oranges, eating almonds, lower stress, lower cortisol in the brain. Don't eat spicy foods, coffee or dairy if you have a big pitch coming up. Be Mother Teresa. What I mean by that is really what I'm talking about in oxytocin. It's be protective. Oh, I'm losing pearls. Oh, dear. Oh, well, life is like that. I'm shedding. I'm pearls of wisdom I'm giving you here. My God. This was planned. Be Mother Teresa. By that I mean get protective of your audience instead of thinking them. Rule of 3. This is a great one. When you have a room full of people and they appear like an army, pick out one on the left, one in the middle, and one on the right, and keep having a conversation with 1, 2, 3. And that way you don't have to think about who I'm going to talk to, and it looks like you're talking and including everyone. If the brain freezes, well, drugs. Beta blockers from your doctor or from the health food store at Whole Foods. I'm sure we can pick up Qiconj, Qiconj. But there's also some little quick tips that you can do, such as placing a prop across the room beforehand. It could be an iPad, it could be a pen, it could be a water bottle. Buy yourself some time when you're freaking out. Pause, confidently look at people. You're freaking out, they don't know it. Take a sip. Plan for some of these things because they're debilitating and it's very real. Okay. Just to round this out, let me just ask you, if there's something besides the moment that has you up in arms or have you like a deer in the headlights, ask yourself, are you holding on to some old epic fail? It could be from 3rd grade when you screwed up and everybody laughed. Whatever it is, identify it. Because thinking on your feet, keeping cool under fire, separates the women from the girls and the men from the boys. You need this skill. And the last image I want to leave you with is our wonderful, beloved local hero who we lost. And I want you to think of Robin, because this was a guy who, in his own words, was bullied as a kid. He was a short, fat kid who was bullied and not liked. He was voted least likely to succeed. And he became the face of improv out of San Francisco to the world. And you don't have to be Robin Williams, but I want you to think of Robin Williams when you're on your feet and performance anxiety has got you by the throat. What would Robin do? Okay, let's move on to the art of influence, another very big part of thinking on your feet. So let's start with another improv game. Because one of the things when you're on your feet that you have to do, and improv people learn this, is you always have to be an expert. Even if you don't know, you have to come across with a lot of confidence. Because if you look weak up there, how's that going to be? Especially when you're talking to your leadership team. So let's try an exercise. This one's called the good, bad, and the ugly. I need 3 people. 3 brave people. There's a brave one. There's another one. Okay, up here. Okay, now, with this, you're going to be, as I give you more pearls of wisdom, you're the good, you're the bad, and you're the ugly. And by that, we're going to give you a topic, and we'll start with an easy, fun one out of our life. Your topic is, how do you motivate a sullen teenage boy to do chores? And I want you to give good advice, and I want you to give really bad advice, and you off the charts, harmful, terrible advice. But I want you to sell it. You want to sell it with confidence. Okay, how do you motivate a sullen teenage boy to do chores?
Age. Well, if it's a boy that's at least of age that can start driving, I would definitely start off with showing him that once we start getting some of these things done around the house, there's a good possibility that we could be going to that used car lot in the next couple of weeks.
What's your advice?
Show tunes. There's a lot of that news TV show where all the high schoolers break out in songs. So all high schoolers love to sing to melodious child memories. And so if you just put on a CD or MP3 player, it'll be right off the couch and sweep it.
Our expert has spoken. And now for our other expert.
Sometimes you have to resort to the unthinkable. But the way that I get my son to do chores is we smoke weed afterwards. And then we look at Playboy. So that's how you do it. It's incredibly motivating.
Oh, what wonderful advice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have a seat. But what I love what everyone did is they sold it, right? And a lot of times on our feed, we don't know all the answers. So, of course, I'm not telling you to just completely make stuff up in our business life. You know, you really have two ways you can go. One, you can toss to someone, but do it with a lot of aplomb. My colleague is going to handle this one and try to set something up. No, beforehand, set someone up with an expert in case you get into trouble. That's always a wise way to go. To have
you call it pimping in improv?
Call it what?
Pimping.
But in business, we call it being wise. And you especially want to get someone who's a rank above you. That's even better. But if you have to take it, take it. There's nothing worse than, oh, I don't know. You know, nobody wants to see that. Okay. So, we can't talk about art of influence without talking about executive presence. This is a term everybody loves and everybody knows it when they see it. But let's break it down. These are some things that I think make it up. People who have executive presence have a way of reframing issues when people flounder, right? They're the guy who can somehow take this mess that we're dealing with and find that narrative thread. To me, that's executive presence. They earn a reputation for cutting to the chase and driving consensus. And they can do it on the fly. They know how to barter valued currencies without being cowed by rank. Do you know what I mean by that? They can barter valued currencies. Well, let's say you're on a task force and you're presenting to a leadership team. In that moment, you're the guy because you've got news from the front. You've got valuable information that leadership team wants. And in exchange, they barter and give you a seat at the table. So remember that. You might be a schlub 5 minutes before and got no power 2 minutes after, but when in your speaking, in that moment, you were asked to speak. You're the expert. Remember that. And think of like a horse trader. You're there to barter valued currencies. A seat at the table for the information you know. The access to the front lines, or whatever it is. People with executive presence foster debate. They're not cowards. They jump in to the hard stuff. And they help everyone else switch gears. Because we get cowardly in companies. There's a lot at stake. Mortgage on our house. The really brave ones, they're the ones who have presence. And remember, you don't get what you deserve. You can't see this. You don't get what you deserve. You get what you negotiate. Words to live by. Okay, another thing is movement and voice. Surely on your feet. These things really matter. Again, don't speak up here. It's tinny. Speak from your diaphragm and project. Hear that difference than speaking here? You just have to get in touch with here because it forces air up to the vocal cords. People who have executive presence change how their volume, their pacing, their emphasis. They're not monotone. There's a lot of us who are monotone. You've got to look at this. If you really want to have this, especially on your feet, when you have a short time to get people's attention. Yes, ma'am?
I was going to say one of the best ways to figure out just how monotone you are is to record your voice, speaking in a way that you think that you're telling like a story, and then listen to it. And then you'll figure out everybody really is monotone until you have to listen to yourself, and then you realize, man, I thought I was emphasizing things, but I'm not, and it kind of forces you to emphasize much more than you, and much more than you think you would normally, or that you might feel comfortable with, but it makes it more impactful.
Sure. Having it on audio, having it on video, working with a speech coach like me or 100 other people. Look at this. If this is in the way for you, it will hurt your career. How do you work a stage? So many people are so wooden, they come up and this is the only place you stand. You can't do that. You've got to be able to work a room. And that doesn't mean pacing, like a lion. It means having a conversation with Lisa for a while, then having a conversation over here. I like to think of it as walk, pause, connect. Walk, pause, connect. That way it's more pleasant for the listener. Okay, what would you add? Anything else? Oh, here's a fun one. The eyebrow flash. Most people, when they meet someone, they do this. Hi, Look at the difference when you do this. Hey. Yeah. It's the universal recognition of acknowledgement. Make sure you have the eyebrow flash. I'll be emailing you and watching. Our voice has 3 ranges. A high voice, a middle voice, and a deep voice. And it's the reason most newscasters have a deeper voice, because it has more power. So speak in your deepest range. It just has more presence. Okay, the pitch. Now, we'll certainly get much more into this when we have more time in the 4-hour workshop. But I spent a lot of time thinking of this, and I think I've got it down to this haiku. When you have to think on your feet and you don't know what's coming, remember these 3 sentences. Whatever your story is, make them care first, make them believe, which is the evidence part, why you should be driving it, what legal has to say, what the competition is doing, whatever the facts are. And then third, make me trigger. It's not enough to just present information. You have to trigger something viral in the listener that makes them want to tell that story to someone else. Make me care, make me believe, and make me trigger. Let that be your go-to when you have to think on your feet. There are great storytellers, and there are people who are duds at storytelling, or people who don't even try. Let me help you as a speechwriter. There's an architecture to a great anecdote. Follow this, and I promise you'll tell better stories. The first one is, in a great story, we paint some picture of a hero. It could be you, it could be your colleague, but there's a central figure or a central team, usually. And they're told with color and character. We get a sense of them. So this hero's journey, they learn something or they do something heroically. That usually makes a great story. The second part is where most bad storytellers lose it. They forget that you have to build tension in a story. All great stories have tension. And there's many literary devices. Here's a few. The narrow escape, the big discovery, telling truth to power. There's a million of these, pointing out the gap between the dream and the reality. These are all rhetorical devices, literary devices, but they make your story come alive. There has to be a tension point. Then there has to be a turning point where something happened, something gets resolved, and then for business, a lesson gets learned. Yeah? Mother first? Okay. I'm going to tell something that's about telling truth to power. When I worked in television full-time, we did an interview, we did a documentary about Stanford, and we got to interview Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. So we were so excited. The team flew from San Francisco all the way to Washington, D.C., and we got to the Supreme Court. Has anyone seen the Supreme Court? It's so impressive. These giant steps that walk up, and these marble pillars, and then we had to walk down these hallowed halls, and there was, the justices on each of these beautiful mahogany walls. So we finally get to the outer chamber, and we sit there like good little, I don't know what, children almost, waiting for the great justice to come. We wait for an hour, then she flings open the door, and she says, "You've got 5 minutes." So we scurried around, and we're setting up the lights and the camera and doing everything. And then the director did something I will never forget. He said, "Justice O'Connor, I know you have the nation's business on your shoulders, far more important than our interview. But we have traveled across country for this. And this is for students. This is for Stanford students. And your story would be so exciting to them, but we can't get it in 5 minutes. We can't. You won't reveal yourselves. Could we have 20? And she said yes. And that moment, me as a young reporter, I realized you can tell truth to power. You can risk it. And sometimes it works. And it was a lesson I take with me. It made me more confident to ask for the order. So I think that hits these points. And if you hit these points, and in the longer workshop we'll do some with your stories, you'll find you'll tell better stories. Okay. Does anybody need a minute to having a cell phone withdrawal or anything? I know this crowd, this Bay Area crowd. Okay. Well, let's move on to some what-if scenarios. We're going to get some of you guys up here for the real stuff, okay? So here's the first one. How do you win back a resistant, distracted peers? Gosh, people today are rude. They're on their laptops, they're on their phones, they got a million things going on. Maybe they're not even rude, they're just busy. How do you win back? You prepared for your whole presentation. How do you win back the crowd? What do? What have you done? You've all encountered it.
Sometimes if you stand right close to them, they get a little embarrassed and they'll stop what they're doing.
That's the last thing I was going to say. It's a great one. It's a great one. You stand next to them, but here's the trick. You don't look at them. If you look at them, it'll break your magic. And especially if they're senior to you, you don't want to look at them. But they're human, and they will have a reaction to that because you're a little in their space and usually can get it back. So that's a great one. What else? Yeah?
I have to try flattery.
Try what?
Flattery.
Flattery?
So, I might say, flattery Cheryl's like talking about. I know Cheryl's got some great experience in that area. Maybe you might care to share that experience with the group.
That's a great one. Call someone out.
Well,
Not calling them out in a negative. I didn't mean that in a negative way. I meant literally in a neutral way. Call them call them forth. Call them forth is a better way to say it. Okay. Any more? Let me give you some, and then please feel free to jump in. And I wrote some down here. Take a surprise poll. You got to shake up. You have to shake up what I call their automatic guessing machine. They think they know what you're going to do, and so they don't have to pay attention. So you have to physically, you have to do something to shake it up. Take a surprise poll. Call out the elephant in the room. Ask them, call them, say, well, what's going on here, guys? Talk to me. And here's 4 things it's usually about when people are resistant. These 4 things really show up almost every time. They're resisting because they feel they don't have time for what you're talking about. There's no money in the budget. They don't trust you, or there's no interest. No time, no money, no trust, no interest. Find out which one it is. Call out the elephant in the room. Have a killer prop in your pocket. There's a famous TED Talk by a neuroscientist, and she brings out a live brain. She's talking, and all of a sudden she calls for her assistant, and he comes from the wings, and he hands her in her hand, and she holds it. Talks about a couple seconds, and leaves. Boy, the room was riveted. One time I gave a speech on healthcare reform. Well, it's over 1,000 pages. So I took it and I thumped it on the table. That got everybody's attention. Didn't mention it, moved on. You don't want to overuse these things, but you just have to change people's automatic guessing machine. Sometimes you can set up a surprise visitor. I once spoke at Sony, and everybody in the room was about 25 hotshot sales guys, and they didn't want to listen to me for nothing. I could not get them back, but I had the vice president on speed dial, and I had him ready to come in because I knew I was going to be in trouble. Plan for it. Media, of course. Demo something. Have an audio tape. Have video. Have a sudden change. If you're over here, go over here and start writing on the whiteboard. And then call on somebody. Just have to shake it up. And then, I'm sorry, what is your name? Paula. And then Paula's a great one. Shame them. Stand close to them, a little too close, and talk from here for a minute. They'll shut up. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is your recommendation for keeping your own frustration as at bay while you see the room disengaged?
Yes, right. Again, I really do the prop thing. I have a water across the room or something because I don't want to lose my power of I'm teaching the class or whatever. So I walk, deliberately and think, and I look out at the crowd, and I just try to own the room again and buy some time because, again, that 90 seconds, either whether it's anger or fear, it usually will dissipate. You just need to buy some time. You don't want to be a whiner. That doesn't work. So sometimes in the heat of emotion, you've just got to buy yourself some time. Okay, I need a volunteer on winning back distracted audiences. So it's a fun topic. The topic is, if you rule the world, what were the 3 idiots that you'd banish from your world? So we need one person to speak about that off the cuff, and then I'm giving the whole room permission to be jerks. Interrupt, ask hard questions, get on your laptop, do everything that a distracted, resistant audience would be. Okay? And the topic's fun. We've all got pet peeves. If you ruled the world, what 3 idiots would you banish? All right. Okay. Now remember, guys, and just keep it short, just a couple minutes. Let him speak for a little bit, but then you have a permission to be rude.
Idiot number 1 is the person who came up with the POS system at HomeDepot.com. I ordered something from HomeDepot.com, and it went on the back order.
What have you got against Home Depot?
Let me tell you, it's a really interesting story. You'll really, really appreciate why I hate these people. So I ordered it, and it went on back order. By the time it came off back order, a point of sale system. So by the time it came off back order, in fact, I ordered 3 things. First one was delivered. Second one was on back order, as was the third. Second one, by the time it came off back order, the wait had been so long that at that point I actually had to, my credit card had been stolen, and I was now on a new credit card. Have you ever had, who here has ever had
Maybe it was your
card?
accent as you were filling in the form that, made it a backward.
Bruce,
And he didn't understand.
Bruce, don't be ridiculous. My accent doesn't translate on it.
Oh, yes, it does.
So who, quick show of hands here. Who here has ever had a credit card number cancelled? Yeah? Yeah. So, and who here has ever thought of going to Home Depot? Don't do it. So because the credit card had been cancelled, and because the order was halfway through, they were unable to change the order to the new credit card.
Wait a minute. You started out to tell us about 3 types of idiots that you would abandon.
So the first, and the person who came up with the system that wouldn't let them do this, that wouldn't let them put my new credit card.
Okay, we got that. What are the other two?
So I'm going to take the person, I'm going to take the supervisor at Home Depot who didn't know about the system. Who told me that it was okay, they could put the new credit card in, they could put a new order in, but as soon as that happened, this thing went on back order until the middle of next century.
And
And now I'm dropping it
You
down.
screwed up, and now you're blaming Home Depot because, come on. What's the matter with you?
My problem here was twofold. One, their system was a problem, and that's why one of the idiots who's being banished. I'll come to that in just a second. It was a beautiful set. But one of the guy who defined the system.
I want some information.
The information. So the problem is the man who defined the system failed to allow for a change like that. And then the other idiot was the person who was on the end of the phone who told me, despite the fact that I warned them this was going to happen, who told me that my order wouldn't go on back.
Oh, Alan, we've all got problems. I'm sorry. Somebody else is going to have to take over, but thanks.
Okay.
It gets that bad. So, when you have a distracted audience, ask them direct questions like Alan did. Very good. Be responsive. When they ask you stuff, you've got to stop and answer them. You can't just shine them on. And then remember some of these things. Take a poll. Call out what's happening. You could have said, wait, you guys, I have the floor, some of these things you have to plan for, but it's smart. Have a demo, have an audio, have something showy, shiny objects. You know how we are. Sudden change, you could have gone to the blackboard. Standing too close. I don't think you tried that. Okay, here's another one.
Can I say it was a lot of fun to be able to be a really jerky audience.
Oh, good.
I can tell you it, Jay. You wait till your session next week.
Good. Okay, let's try another one. And Paul, I think this one's for you about the grandstanders. How has this shown up in your life?
You're in there, you're doing something, and they have their own agenda that they want to know something that isn't included in what you were thinking of doing anyways, but they're not going to let it go. They're coming back and trying to get
No, they're not.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, sometimes it can just be a regular guy, sometimes it can be an adversary. You're fighting for budgets over something, and this guy, he's moving in. It's part of business life, right? So what do? Well, here's a couple of things to do, and then we're going to do another exercise. First of all, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. When someone grandstands, first of all, don't think you have to answer their laundry list. A lot of times people will raise their hand and give you, 4 things. You don't have to answer that. Answer the first one and do it with authority. Blame time. We'd love to get to this, but in the interest of time, we must move on. Said with great authority. You have to contain the interloper quickly. If you let them go on, especially if they're funny, they'll get the sympathy of the crowd, and then you'll look weaker. And more importantly, you might not get your important agenda. So you have to do it quickly. If you can do it with humor, that's the best. Humor and firmness, or both. But very quickly, you have to establish your authority with them. You know, I think sometimes this is good. If you can anticipate you're going to have a grandstander in the room, give them a small role beforehand. Arrange beforehand to give them a minute and a half of something to do. It will deflate their sails when it's time for you to come on. Let's see. And of course, the old standby, put it in the parking lot. You know, you say you raise an excellent point, but we're going to have to take that offline. And then the last one I think is very good is enlist the group to be on your side. So you say something like, you know, you raise some interesting points, but I think we have to use objective criteria here. Is this a legal precedent? What are the industry norms? Does this affect cost? You know, whatever your issues are, what is regulatory going to say? You know, people, what do you think? Don't you think we have to stick to these criteria? This is getting a little off field. You have to seize the day back. Okay? So let's try one. So the topic is your bucket list. You need someone up here to just talk about 3 things they want to do before they die. It could be personal, it could be business, something you really want to accomplish. Okay? Tell me your name again.
Cassandra.
Okay, so Cassandra's going to talk, and then we need a grandstander. Paul?
I can stand with the grandest.
Okay. I'd like you to try to seize the meeting away from Cassandra, okay? And that means standing up, and you're going to have to handle it. So some things you can do. You don't have to answer if he starts the laundry list. Blame time. Get the crowd behind you. Do it fast. Acknowledge his point. Take it offline. There's different things you can do. And does anyone want to add to this? I mean, it's a good list, but there's other things. Okay, Cassandra, her bucket list, and then Paul's going to be our grandstander. Go.
For my bucket list, I want to first go on a trip to Africa with my husband. It's a really
Wait, you know, trips are nice. Let's get away from all the standard things. Everybody's got a trip on their list. This thing, I think we're just kind of focusing on bucket lists, and bucket lists aren't where it's at. It's kind of really having a vision for your life. Are we going to talk about visions at all? I mean, you're talking about when it's over. I want to talk about what's going on.
I know what you're saying, but I think everybody has a trip that has meaning and significance to them. So, back to what I was saying.
Again, you know, but it's sure it's a trip, but it's a trip, and you're thinking in this morbid before I die thing, and it must be more positive in the world. There's not enough positivity.
Deer in headlights. Okay, he's an aggressive one. He's an aggressive one, so you got to nip him quick because he's coming on full bore. Ask the crowd to get behind this on what they think.
So what are you trying to say, Paul? So let's hear Cassandra's story first, and let's figure out how that relates to some of the things that you're pointing out.
All right. Go ahead. Yeah, you got it.
Thank you, Cheryl. The second thing that I would like to do is open up my own flower shop. Do something that isn't the standard kind of 9 to 5 grind. I know being a business owner, you put in a lot of.
So wait, a trip, and I just need to ask: is a trip and a business thing? It's all like this success thing. Nothing giving back. Here we are. It's all about your trip, your business. What about giving back?
Well, Paul, what have you given back? What have you given back in the last week? What have you given back?
No. Let Cassandra do it. Let Cassandra do it.
There are ways that you can give back when you're traveling abroad. There are other projects that you can do, and community involvement, whether it be donating resources or again your time and your services. So it doesn't have to be completely one-sided or selfish.
Okay.
No, I only have 2.
That's too good. Too very good. Thank you. It's hard. It's hard, isn't it? It is. It's like you've got one agenda and here comes another one, right? So use some of these and do it early. Especially if if he's particularly cute or particularly, funny, it's even harder. Okay.
I don't want things to get stupid.
What do you do if you have to deliver bad news?
Send an email. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Modern way.
Send Bruce.
Send Bruce. Okay. Well, I think there's really a protocol to this too, and that is, first of all, most people in a company know if bad news is coming. I mean, often they do. So you got to let people vent first. They have to feel heard. You have to acknowledge their pain. And if you must talk about the past, talk about it in terms of lessons learned. We did this, but now we've learned to do X, Y, Z. Don't stay on the past, which is when you have bad news, people want to keep you there. So you have to move forward to what's changed. If you have to say no clearly. There's nothing worse than a speaker when you don't really know where he stands. If you have to deliver bad news, deliver it. But then you move on to what is working, what's coming. You have to clear out hot button language. A lot of times when there's bad news, people, boy, they're just going to get riled up, and you've just got to get them calmed down to business language and call that elephant out in the room, that it's getting too heated. We can't have that. Reframe the conversation. I love this image. Instead of you Marianne fighting Cassandra and Marianne are on one side of the table, and the problem is on the other side of the table. You have to make allies out of adversaries to the bigger issue. Call out people's filters. So many times in business we have filters. The home office, the field, sales versus creative, HR versus OD. There's a lot of fiefdoms, and you have to make sure that that's not going on when you're giving bad news or controversial news. And, you want to drive home that the problem is temporary. Most people get locked in, this is going to happen forever. So the last one I want to mention is, I call it the 3 options pitch. And what that means is, when you have to give bad news, you have to answer people, you tell them first what they want to hear and say, I wish I could. If only I could give this to you. Then you give them the safe, boring option that they really don't want, and then you give them your preference. It's a way to kind of soften things, and it tends to work. It sounds a little Machiavellian, but it actually works when you have bad news to tell. So we're getting...
You sound a little bit more like a human, too. Like you're not the boss delivering bad news or making...
Yeah. A categorical statement, this is it.
Yeah.
Right, because that never goes over. You have to hear people. That's why I say you let them vent, you acknowledge their pain. There's a process to it that works, and especially when you're on your feet in these hairy situations and they're all coming at you. So we have it's 10 till. Alan, we just have 5 more minutes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to drop an exercise, and then what do you do if you become unglued? You just lose it, deer in the headlights. What do?
You apologize.
You apologize?
Yeah, I've actually, not that long ago, lost it during a webinar. It's a webinar that's supposed to be interactive, and this is done with a webinar, not what I was telling you ladies, with the PowerPoint. And it was, I try to tell everyone and remind everyone I'm the facilitator. So that means it's interactive. When I ask a question, that means, I want to hear a response from someone, even if it's a yes, no, because they're on a phone, I don't know what they're doing. And after 20 minutes of this one webinar, no one was answering anything. And I finally said, okay, we have 2 choices. I can turn this back into a lecture, which will be dull and boring, and that's exactly how I said it. Or we can keep it as an interactive thing. So what is your choice? Do you want to have interactive, or do you want lecture? And I sat there at my desk counting, because no one was answering, because the next thing that almost came out of my mouth was, fine, the webinar is over and you can all make it up later.
But you didn't.
I did not do that. I was ready to push that
Yes.
in the session. But I did, and everyone knows I show my feelings whether you can see me or not. And they all knew that I was upset at that point, and I was fine with that because I let them know that I'm myself. I'm not trying to put on any airs when I'm doing these webinars, and that I'm here for them. I'm thrilled to be there. I want them I want them even if they don't want to be there. You know, some of them are forced into it. So let's make the most out of an hour.
And did they?
Yes.
They came around?
Yes.
Well, I think he did great. I think he was very human. You were very human, and you called it out. I don't really hear an apology here. I heard you gave people choices.
Well, no, and then at the very end, when I go, okay, what did you like about today's webinar? What didn't you like about today's webinar? And then I said, aside from me, you know, kind of spouting off at you, and I do apologize for that, but, you know, I wanted to get this moving.
I think that's minor. I think you did fine. Fine, and it's not really a heavy apology. You don't want to get into a big apology with people.
Oh no, I didn't feel I had them.
But I think you handled it very well. Well, if you become unglued, remember I told you about the prop. You know, place something across the room. I mean, if it's a live situation, a laptop, a tablet, a pen, something, water, that buys you time when you calm down for the 90 seconds. Bring go-to questions with you. Have at least 2 with you because it's going to come up. You're going to get unglued. If you got a question ready, you don't have to think about it. Give them something to do. Take a quiz, take a poll, demonstrate something, change it. Yes?
Another thing that I like to do is if I am going in front of a group and they tell me, okay, you've got 30 minutes, I always have, okay, if I only get 10, what am I going to do? Because that way, if I end up getting cut short or they say, okay, they start asking a lot of questions, I know what I can drop and what are the absolute critical things that I have to do, so I can just say, okay, skip this, let's talk about this.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was going to say when you cut you short. You never prepare your 40-minute presentation. You have to prepare, I think, your 10-minute, your 2-minute presentation or 5-minute presentation, because the way business is now, it's going to come up. So plan for that. And then if you do, and you haven't planned, use what I taught you about make me care, make me believe, make me trigger. That's a real good go-to when you have to cut down what you have to say. You know, I think another thing to do is have someone, if you have a boss in the room, have them advocate for you and stand up and say, I know we had to cut Lisa short, but she's really got something to say. Let's get this scheduled. So if you have someone higher than you advocate for you, that has a lot more sway too. Okay. Well, we are really getting out of time. So as Alan said, we have a much longer version of this where we're going to give you more of a chance to get up here. And also just know that I customize workshops and private coaching for companies. That's what I do. Thank you.